Wyoming, 1880. Snow spiraled across the station platform, dusting Elizabeth's trunk with white that matched her pale, trembling fingers. The afternoon train had long since departed, leaving her alone with the howling wind and encroaching dark. 3 hours. She'd been waiting 3 hours. Elizabeth stamped her feet. Cold seeped through her fine Boston boots, utterly useless in the Wyoming territory. Nothing in her wardrobe or her life had prepared her for this. She withdrew Mr. Fletcher's last letter for courage. His neat penmanship had given her such hope when it arrived 2 weeks ago. "My business has prospered, and I seek a partner in life who might help establish a more civilized presence in our growing community," he'd said. She'd read promise in those lines, not just financial security after her father's disgrace, but the possibility of genuine partnership. Their correspondence suggested a man of substance and vision. And Wolf Creek, the coincidence had seemed providential. The very town where her brother William was imprisoned. His last letter had arrived months ago, desperate and strange, the handwriting nearly unrecognizable. "They'll never let me out, Lizzie, not until..." Elizabeth shook her head. She couldn't think about his letter now. She was about to meet her future husband. 2 months ago, she had stood in the gutted shell of her father's study, an eviction notice in one hand, the echo of his funeral still fresh in her bones. The creditors had come like carrion, and within days she'd lost not just her home, but her position at the Boston Ladies' Academy, her sole livelihood, revoked under the pretense of her father's moral failings. Then she'd seen the advertisement. Bride wanted. Successful businessman in established Wyoming township seeks bride of good character and education. Fletcher's advertisement had appeared precisely when she'd been at her lowest, offering both escape from Boston's humiliations and proximity to her brother. How could it be anything but fate? "Miss, station's closing soon." The station master, gray-mustached and stiff with impatience, eyed her with muted pity. "Your party ain't coming, looks like." "He'll be here," she murmured, looking away. "Mr. Fletcher assured me in his letter he would meet the 4 o'clock train." "He'll come," she reassured herself. Their letters had revealed compatible minds. He'd written of looking forward to intellectual conversation after years among rough mining men. "It's near 7, miss," the man insisted. 4 o'clock came and went. Elizabeth glanced at her father's pocket watch, the only item the creditors hadn't seized. Her ticket to Wolf Creek had emptied her purse. There was no return. "Miss?" The station master's voice broke her reverie. "There's a boarding house down the street if you need a place for the night." "I'm to be married," she said, chin high. "Mr. Fletcher..." A figure emerged down the snowy street, tall, purposeful. Her heart lifted. The man who approached was stout and red-faced, nothing like the prosperous gentleman his letters described. His expensive coat strained across his belly, and his gaze ran over her like a butcher weighing meat. "Miss Harrington?" His reedy voice scraped her expectations raw. Elizabeth curtsied, lips stiff from cold and nerves. "Yes, sir. Elizabeth Harrington from Boston. I'm pleased to..." "This won't do," Fletcher interrupted, circling her. "Won't do at all." She blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "Too old, too educated by half. You've never worked a day in your life, have you, girl?" Heat flared in her cheeks. "Sir, I assure you I'm quite capable. I need a wife who can work the store from dawn to dusk, not some Boston bluestocking with fancy ideas." "It stated education required," she said, her voice tightening, "and I provided references from the Boston Ladies' Academy where I taught..." "Teaching," Fletcher spat the word. "What good is that to me? Can you haul 50-pound sacks of flour?" "If you'd give me a chance..." "I won't. Wasted journey for both of us. Good evening, Miss Harrington." He turned and walked away, boots crunching in the snow. Elizabeth stood frozen. Humiliation burned in her chest, hotter than the cold ever could. Never Had anyone spoken to her with such crude dismissal? In Boston, rejection came wrapped in politeness. Here it came with a sneer. "Wait!" she called. "Please, Mr. Fletcher, I have nowhere to go." "Not my concern," he said without turning. "Should have stayed where you belonged." Then he was gone, swallowed by the swirling snow, leaving Elizabeth alone with her trunk, her valise, and the crushing weight of reality. The station master had disappeared into his office, evidently embarrassed by the scene. Tears pricked at her eyes, but Elizabeth refused to let them fall. Harringtons did not weep in public, her father had always said. Not even when abandoned at a remote station in a strange town with night falling and nowhere to go. Her thoughts turned to William. Her brother was somewhere in this town, imprisoned for theft, according to the official record. She'd come here for him as much as for the promise of security. His last letter had been odd, the pages filled with seemingly mundane news interspersed with underlined words that, when read together, formed a message only she would understand. It was their childhood code, a secret language developed during lonely evenings in their father's library. The hidden message had chilled her to the bone. "Sheriff has secret. Need your help. Come soon. Danger." William hadn't specified the nature of this secret, but the urgency was clear. Whatever it was had gotten her brother imprisoned. And now, stranded in this wilderness town with nothing but her wits, she was his only hope. Elizabeth straightened her spine. She would not be defeated. Somehow, she would find lodging for the night. Tomorrow, she would inquire about her brother. Perhaps there was another position available, teaching perhaps, or... A drunken miner stumbled out of the saloon across the street, careening into her path. "Well, look at this. Fresh face in town," he slurred, reaching for her arm. Elizabeth recoiled, stepping backward to avoid his grasp. Her heel caught on the uneven wooden platform. The world tilted sickeningly as she began to fall toward the tracks. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. In one fluid motion, she was swept upright, and the drunken miner was firmly pushed back with a single hand. "That's enough, Miller." The deep voice rumbled like distant thunder, vibrating through the chest she was suddenly pressed against. "Go sleep it off." The miner's bleary eyes widened with recognition and fear. "Sorry, Sheriff. Didn't mean no harm." He stumbled away, suddenly sobered. Elizabeth found herself looking up, far up, into a face that stopped her breath. The man who held her was tall, extraordinarily so, with broad shoulders under a worn leather duster. Beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, sharp cheekbones framed a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Amber, almost golden in the fading light, with an intensity that seemed to see through her carefully constructed facade. For one suspended moment, neither moved. His hands at her waist were warm, almost burning through the fabric of her coat. Then, as if suddenly aware of their improper contact, he set her gently on her feet. "You all right, ma'am?" His voice was lower now, controlled, but with a rough edge that sent a shiver down her spine. "Yes," she breathed. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," he said. "Sheriff Wyatt Hayes." The sheriff, her brother's jailer, Elizabeth thought. "Sheriff," she said, recovering her composure, "I'm Elizabeth Harrington, recently of Boston." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe. But it passed too quickly to read. "Harrington," he repeated slowly. "Any family in these parts, miss?" Her pulse jumped. William. No one could know about him, or she'd never find a decent place to stay. "No," she lied. "No family anywhere anymore. Harrington's a common name." "Wolf Creek's not kind to those without connections," the sheriff said after a beat, "especially not as winter sets in." "I'm discovering that," Elizabeth muttered. One corner of his mouth curved. "Town's small, but we look after our own." He glanced at her luggage. Mrs. Wilson runs a boarding house on Timber Street. Reasonable rates, clean rooms, might even know of work if you're needing it. I appreciate the assistance, but I wouldn't want to impose. No imposition. He bent to lift her trunk. Town this size, helping stranded travelers falls under my jurisdiction. She had no choice but to follow. They walked down the snow-covered street, past shuttered shops and dim windows. A few townsfolk passed, glancing curiously, then vanishing behind doors. People retire early here, she noted, breath fogging. Smart folks do, he said. Nights get cold and dark. A distant howl rose from the mountains. Wolves, she whispered. Hayes tilted his head slightly, listening. Yes, but they rarely come near town. Rarely, she echoed. But they do come? He met her eyes. In the gloom, his irises glowed. Everything has its territory, Miss Harrington. As long as you respect boundaries, there's little to fear. It sounded like a warning. They stopped before a 2-story clapboard house with warm lamplight glowing from the windows. A painted sign read Wilson's Boarding House. Here we are, he said, setting her luggage at the steps. Mrs. Wilson will see you settled. Thank you, Sheriff. She studied him in the amber glow, rugged, stern, not a villain, but not quite tame. You've been most kind, she murmured. Wolf Creek takes care of its own, he said again, then added with a meaningful glance. Even those just passing through. Their eyes locked. Something unseen passed between them, a pull, deep and strange, as if the earth shifted beneath her feet. Then he stepped back. Good night, Miss Harrington. Good night, Sheriff. She watched until his figure vanished into the dark. As she reached for the door, her hand hesitated. The letter inside her reticule burned against her skin. She pulled it out and read the hidden words again. Sheriff has secret. Need your help. Come soon. Danger. What truth had William uncovered? What secret could be so dangerous it cost him his freedom? Elizabeth straightened her shoulders. She'd come here to find answers. She would uncover the truth. For William. For herself. And if Wyatt Hayes was hiding something, she would expose it. Chapter 1. The dining room at Wilson's boarding house was modest but warm, a haven from the bitter cold outside. Steam curled from bowls of venison stew at each place setting, the rich aroma making Elizabeth's stomach growl. She couldn't recall when she'd last eaten. Don't be shy, dear, Mrs. Wilson said, setting a basket of fresh bread on the table. Plenty more where that came from. Elizabeth glanced around the table. Mrs. Wilson, plump and kind-eyed with silver-streaked hair. Miss Laura Peyton, a striking redhead from the town dress shop. And Mrs. Hendricks, a stern-faced woman en route to visit a sister in Montana. In Boston, Elizabeth would have known precisely how to navigate such company. What to say, when to smile, how to maintain decorum. Here, she watched for cues, smoothing her napkin as she tried to fit into a world she barely understood. Mrs. Wilson stepped away to fetch more bread. The moment the kitchen door swung closed, Miss Peyton leaned toward Mrs. Hendricks. That's her, she whispered, loudly enough for Elizabeth to hear. Fletcher's mail-order bride, the one he rejected right at the station. How dreadful, Mrs. Hendricks replied, peering over her spectacles. Though I'm hardly surprised. These arrangements never end well. In my day, a woman of quality wouldn't dream of such desperate measures. I heard he took one look at her clothes and said she wouldn't last a week in Wolf Creek. Miss Peyton went on, clearly relishing the story. Called her a shelf-worn spinster in front of half the town. Elizabeth kept her eyes fixed on her stew, cheeks burning. In Boston, gossip never reached the ears of its subject, at least not directly. And now she's stuck, Mrs. Hendricks murmured. No money to return east, I suppose. One wonders about her background. Respectable women don't typically land in such circumstances. Sheriff helped her with her bags, Laura added with a pointed look. Never seen him take such interest in a newcomer, especially a woman. Perhaps she's not as respectable as she appears, Mrs. Hendricks said with a sniff. Elizabeth's grip on her spoon tightened. She refused to let them see her flinch. Mrs. Wilson returned and took in the scene at once. Elizabeth's rigid posture, the other women's two bright smiles. "Laura Peyton," she said, setting down the bread with more force than necessary. "If you have questions about Miss Harrington, perhaps you might ask her directly, instead of whispering like schoolchildren." Laura flushed. "I was just telling Mrs. Hendricks what happened with Fletcher." Which Miss Harrington experienced firsthand and hardly needs to hear repeated, Mrs. Wilson snapped. Then, more gently, to Elizabeth. "You must forgive us, dear. Small towns run on gossip the way cities run on coal. No malice intended." "I understand curiosity about newcomers," Elizabeth said, managing a tight nod. Laura recovered quickly. "Well, since Mrs. Wilson insists on directness, what brings a Boston lady all the way to Wolf Creek? Surely there were suitable matches closer to home." The bluntness nearly made Elizabeth choke. In Boston, such a question would be unthinkable. "Laura!" Mrs. Wilson barked, but the redhead only shrugged. "You told me to ask directly." Elizabeth dabbed her lips with her napkin, buying a moment. "My circumstances in Boston changed suddenly. My father passed recently, and I found myself in need of a fresh start." "A teacher," Mrs. Wilson interjected quickly. "Miss Harrington taught at a ladies' academy in Boston. Fortunate, considering our situation." Laura snorted. "That's putting it mildly. Billy Thompson set fire to the woodshed behind the schoolhouse yesterday." "The town council's desperate," Mrs. Wilson said. "I serve as secretary, and I can tell you, they'd hire almost anyone with proper credentials at this point." "Almost anyone," Mrs. Hendricks echoed, eyes narrowing. "I imagine they'd want references, our respectable family history." Elizabeth froze, then lifted her chin. "My father was Professor Edward Harrington of Cambridge University. My credentials are impeccable." What she didn't say, no one must know about William. His imprisonment had already cost her one position. Here, it could ruin everything. "The council meets tomorrow," Mrs. Wilson said quickly. "I'll introduce you." "You're very kind," Elizabeth murmured. "Nonsense, we need a teacher, and you need work. Besides," she winked, "the children could use a little Boston discipline." "Speaking of firm hands," Laura said, leaning in again, "the sheriff certainly moved quickly to assist you, not like him to take an interest in strangers." "He was merely being considerate," Elizabeth said, flushing. "Wyatt Hayes considerate?" Laura raised a brow. "The man barely speaks 3 words a day, all dark and brooding, marches around like an avenging angel." "Laura," Mrs. Wilson warned, "I'm only saying what everyone thinks. He's handsome, sure, but there's something wild about him." She shivered theatrically. "Not that I'd mind being caught in those arms." Elizabeth recalled his hands at her waist, the amber heat of his gaze. "He seemed perfectly civilized to me." "He's a good man," Mrs. Wilson said firmly. "This town was lawless before he came." "Well, I heard he's particularly strict with one prisoner," Mrs. Hendricks said, voice dropping. "A thief from back east. Keeps him locked up tight, no leniency, no visitors." Elizabeth's heart stumbled. "William?" "The sheriff enforces the law as written," Mrs. Wilson said briskly. "Now then, who's for apple pie?" That night, Elizabeth sat by the window of her small room, William's letter open on her lap. The coded message seemed to glow in the lamplight. "Sheriff has secret. Need your help. Come soon. Danger." What secret? And how could she help? Being jilted at the station had felt humiliating, but now it might have been a blessing. As Fletcher's wife, she'd have had no freedom. As the school teacher, she could blend in, ask questions, plan. But it meant getting close to Wyatt Hayes. She thought of his eyes when he looked at her, the resonance she'd felt, a vibration like a struck tuning fork. Dangerous. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass. Snow fell softly outside. Here, she had a second chance, a clean slate, a new name. But if gaining the sheriff's trust meant later betraying him, What did that make her? And worse, what if William was wrong? The Wolf Creek schoolhouse was a simple one-room structure, warmed by a pot-bellied stove. Rows of battered desks faced a chalkboard, windows filmed with grime. A faint scent of smoke lingered in the air. "It's not much," Mrs. Wilson said as they entered, "but it's all we have." "It has potential," Elizabeth replied, removing her gloves and inspecting a dusty shelf of books. The town council had hired her that morning. Her Boston credentials outweighed any doubts. By noon, she was officially the new teacher. By 1 o'clock, she stood before 28 students, ages 5 to 16. Most looked suspicious. A few looked bored. "Good afternoon," she began. "I am Miss Harrington, your new teacher." A red-haired boy smirked. "Till you run off like Miss Barnes did." "That remains to be seen, Mr. Thompson. Billy Thompson." "Ah, the arsonist." "Well, Mr. Thompson," she said, "as I haven't met a cattle driver yet who strikes my fancy, I imagine I'll be here a while. Now, let's begin with an assessment." It didn't take long to see the education had been patchy at best. Most of the older boys struggled to read. The younger ones had barely been taught at all. Only one child truly engaged, a small girl with serious brown eyes and 2 braids. She raised her hand for every question. "Please, Miss Harrington," she asked during geography, "is it true Boston is by the ocean, with real ships?" "Yes, Clara, ships come from all over the world." "Did you ever see a sea monster?" Billy snorted. "There ain't no such thing." "There aren't any such things," Elizabeth corrected. "And we don't call each other names, Mr. Thompson." Clara pressed on. "What about wolves? Boston got wolves?" "Odd question. Not in the city." "We got plenty here," Billy said with a grin. "They eat little girls who ask too many questions." "They don't eat people," Clara insisted. "Not regular wolves, but the other kind might." Laughter erupted. "Clara believes in werewolves," a girl announced. "My pa says she's touched in the head." "Silence," Elizabeth clapped her hands. The room quieted. "We show respect for each other's ideas. Now, let's continue." When the day ended, Elizabeth was hoarse and exhausted. As the students left, Clara lingered. "Miss Harrington?" she asked quietly. "Do you think I'm touched in the head?" Elizabeth knelt. "Absolutely not. You have a vivid imagination and the courage to speak your mind. That's rare." Clara glanced around, then leaned in. "I saw one, a wolf man, in the woods behind my pa's cabin." Elizabeth blinked. "Did you? What was it like?" "Big. Bigger than any normal wolf. Its eyes glowed, yellow, like honey." "Amber," Elizabeth thought, a chill crawling down her spine. "It didn't hurt me," Clara added. "Just watched. Some folks say the sheriff knows where they live. That's why our animals are safe." Before Elizabeth could respond, Clara darted away. She locked the schoolhouse, lost in thought. So lost, she nearly walked straight into him. "Miss Harrington?" She looked up, always up, into Sheriff Hayes's face. In the daylight, he seemed carved from the wilderness itself. "Sheriff Hayes," she said, schooling her voice. "Good afternoon. Heard you took the teaching position." He wasn't wearing his hat. A lock of dark hair had fallen across his brow, wild and out of place. "News travels quickly in Wolf Creek." "Small towns?" He shrugged. "No secrets." They walked in silence at first, snow crunching beneath their boots. "Most who come from cities don't stay," the sheriff said after a moment had passed. "Too quiet, too wild." "I'm not most people," Elizabeth replied. They stopped at the crossroads. To the right, her lodging. To the left, the jail. Her gaze flicked toward it involuntarily, and the sheriff noticed. "Something interests you about the jail, Miss Harrington?" he asked. She forced a smile, heart skipping a beat. "Just my brother who says you hold a secret," she thought. "Just curious," she said instead. Law in Boston is different. Everything's different here. The sheriff's voice turned distant. Out here, there are older laws, territory, survival, protecting what's yours. Is that why you became sheriff? Elizabeth asked. To protect what's yours. His answer was quiet. Never had much that was mine. He met her eyes. But the town took me in, gave me purpose. Sometimes belonging is enough. At Mrs. Wilson's gate, he stepped back, tipped his hat. Good evening, Miss Harrington. She watched him go, heart hammering. In her room, William's letter waited. Sheriff has secret. Danger. But another thought echoed louder now. What if William was wrong? Chapter 2. 6 weeks in Wolf Creek had taught Elizabeth Harrington many things. How to tend a pot-bellied stove without smoking out her pupils, which floorboards in Mrs. Wilson's hallway creaked, how to stretch butter when supplies dwindled, and most importantly, that acceptance and belonging were not the same. Good morning, Miss Fancy Boston, Mr. Peterson called from the general store. The greeting was genial, but the nickname clung stubbornly. No matter how she altered her speech or hemline, she remained the outsider, useful perhaps, but never one of them. Good morning, Mr. Peterson, she replied with the polite smile she'd perfected over time. Any mail today? Nothing for you, miss. Stage is running late on account of the weather. She nodded, masking her disappointment. She'd written Cheyenne Prison 3 times. No reply. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she made her way toward the schoolhouse. February had buried the town under storm after storm, leaving Wolf Creek both dazzling and desolate beneath the steel-gray sky. A figure exited the sheriff's office ahead, tall, broad, unmistakable. Her pulse betrayed her. She'd invented a dozen reasons to speak with Wyatt Hayes. Ordinances affecting school policy, safety for walking children, territorial government history for lessons. All carefully posed, all aimed toward one goal, gaining his trust and, eventually, access to her brother in the jail. But every attempt ended the same. Polite smiles, reserved warmth, a subtle but unmistakable retreat whenever she broached the prison or its inmates. Best be getting on, Miss Harrington, he'd say, or don't let me keep you. 6 weeks and she was no closer to her goal. Worse, her own defenses had begun to fray. Strategic interest had grown complicated. His rare smiles lingered too long in her mind. The rumble of his voice turned her stomach to knots. Her fascination muddied her purpose, made her hesitate when she should press. Most troubling of all, she'd begun to question William's warning. Wyatt was firm but fair, respected rather than feared. He broke up schoolyard squabbles and carried groceries for widows, not the monster William had claimed. Had her brother lied? It wouldn't be the first time. No. She pushed the thought aside. She was here for William. Whatever interest she felt in Wyatt Hayes, it was irrelevant. Miss Harrington? Wyatt tipped his hat as they neared. Sheriff. She adjusted her scarf against the cold. Early patrol? Checking on the Miller family. Their youngest has the fever. His amber gaze studied her. You're out before sunrise? Lesson preparations. The older children are studying territorial government. She seized the opening. Perhaps you might visit the class. Speak about law enforcement in the territory. He frowned slightly. Not much of a public speaker. The children would be fascinated. She lowered her voice, stepping nearer. You've made quite an impression, especially Clara Sutton. She speaks of you like you're some frontier legend. Something flickered in his expression. Concern, perhaps. Clara has an active imagination. She's a bright child, curious. Elizabeth met his gaze. She still talks about wolves and men who turn into them. His face shuddered. Children and their stories. He glanced toward the mountains. Storms coming in faster than expected. You should cancel classes today. Nonsense, the children are already on their way. Then dismiss early, he said, voice firm, before noon. I don't want children caught in what's brewing. I'll consider it, she replied coolly. Wyatt stepped closer. The heat of him met the cold air between them, Leather, pine, something wild beneath it. Her breath hitched. Elizabeth. The sound of her name, rare, deliberate, sent a slow warmth through her. Promise me. Early dismissal. His urgency startled her. For a heartbeat, she thought he might reach for her. His hand lifted, then fell back. "Good day, Miss Harrington." He strode away and she watched him go. Frustration tangled with something more dangerous. 6 weeks, and she was no closer to the truth, only closer to caring. "Werewolves don't exist, Clara. Everyone knows that," Billy Thompson announced. Elizabeth looked up from helping a younger student. Clara sat rigidly at her desk, chin lifted, cheeks red. "They do exist," she insisted. "I've seen one." The classroom erupted in laughter. 6 weeks had curbed some chaos, but not their frontier boldness. "That's enough," Elizabeth snapped. Outside, wind rattled the schoolhouse eaves. "Return to your geography exercises." "But Miss Harrington," Clara said urgently, "they're real. Sheriff Hayes knows. That's why the wolves don't attack our livestock like they do in Riverdale." Billy scoffed. "Sheriff Hayes doesn't believe in fairy tales. He's just good with a rifle." "He doesn't need a rifle," Clara said hotly. "He can talk to them. I've seen him in the forest at night, and the wolves listen to him." The room stilled. Elizabeth's pulse ticked faster. Was this what William had discovered? No, just a child with fanciful ideas. Still, something about Clara's conviction gave her pause. "Clara," she asked gently, "what exactly did you see?" "She didn't see anything," Billy interrupted. "She's lying. You can't go in the forest at night. Her paw would tan her hide." "I'm not lying," Clara cried, her voice cracked. "You'll see. I'll prove it." The rest of the afternoon passed in heavy silence. Clara kept her head down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. At 3, the bell rang. Children bundled up quickly, eager to beat the storm home. "Remember, straight home," Elizabeth called. "No dawdling." Clara was first out, small shoulders stiff. Elizabeth watched until the last child vanished into the swirling white, then turned to tidy the room. She didn't hear the footsteps through the wind. Only the door slamming open made her jump. John Sutton stood in the doorway, snow on his coat, panic on his face. Even from across the room, she smelled whiskey. "Where is she?" he barked. "Where's my Clara?" Elizabeth's stomach dropped. "She left with the others nearly an hour ago." "She never came home," he said. "I thought maybe she stayed because of the storm." "No," Elizabeth said, heart racing. "She left right after—" She stopped, right after the argument. "After what?" he demanded. "There was an incident," she admitted. "The children teased her about wolves. She was upset." His face darkened. "Those stories again. Ever since her mama died," his voice broke. 2 years, and she still won't let go. Elizabeth had heard whispers. Clara found beside her mother's body, too late to save either. "This is your fault, Miss Fancy Boston." His grief turned to fury. "Filling her head with nonsense. She needs discipline." "Mr. Sutton, if anything happens to her, it's on your head," he roared. "She's all I got left." "That's enough, John." Wyatt stood in the doorway, snow swirling behind him. Sutton turned on him. This teacher's filled Clara's head. "I said enough." Wyatt's voice cut clean and sharp. "Your daughter's missing. Blame won't help." Sutton sagged. "I can't lose her too, Wyatt," he whispered. Elizabeth stepped forward, touched his arm. He trembled beneath her hand. "We'll find her," she said gently. "She's smart. She's trying to prove what she told me about the wolves." Sutton's voice cracked. "I never listened, just told her to grow up. Maybe if I'd—" "You're here now," Elizabeth said. "That matters." Something shifted in him, his fear no longer blinding. He nodded. Wyatt had watched silently. Now he turned. "The forest," Sutton said. "That's where she'd go." Together they pushed into the storm, Sutton shouting his daughter's name, alternating with tearful apologies to Elizabeth. The sheriff's office came into view, light glowing through the white haze. Inside, Wyatt bent over maps, already marking sectors. He looked up sharply as they entered. "Clara's missing," Elizabeth said breathlessly. "She ran after the argument. We think she went into the forest." Something flickered in Wyatt's eyes. Not shock, resignation. "How long?" he asked, pulling on his coat. "Less than an hour." "She'll freeze to death out there," Sutton cried. "We'll find her." Wyatt turned to John. "Gather men at the church, anyone who can walk." Then to Elizabeth. "Miss Harrington, return to Mrs. Wilson's and stay there." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. I wasn't asking permission, Sheriff. This isn't Boston." Wyatt stepped close. "This is Wyoming in a blizzard. Men die 10 feet from their own porches. I won't sit by a fire while a child I'm responsible for is out there." "I expect you to know your limitations." "I know Clara was upset. I know which way she went, and I know I won't sleep if I don't help. Your guilt won't keep you warm. My determination will." He ran a hand through his hair. "Damn it, woman. This isn't about proving yourself. This is life and death." "Exactly, which is why you need every able body." "You're made of stubborn foolishness." Sutton cut in. "She has a point." Wyatt shot him a glare. "Don't encourage her." "I don't need encouragement," Elizabeth said, fastening her cloak. "I need gloves and a lantern." "God almighty," Wyatt loomed over her. "You are the most infuriating—" "Capable," she interrupted. "The word is capable." Something shifted in him, anger softening to something more volatile. "If you come, you follow my orders. Exactly. First time you disobey, I'll drag you back myself." The image sent a flush through her. "I understand." "Do you?" His voice dropped, amber eyes burning. "Because if anything happened to you out there, I'll be careful," she whispered. They stood inches apart. For one charged breath, she thought he might kiss her. "For God's sake!" Sutton burst out. "My daughter's freezing to death while you two make eyes at each other." Wyatt stepped back, breaking the spell. "Gather warm clothes," he said, voice raw. "Meet at the church in 10 minutes. If you can't keep up, I'll keep up." He met her eyes once more. "And Elizabeth," she turned, "stay close to me. The wolves are restless in this weather." Chapter 3. The church bell tolled through the blinding snow, its mournful peal summoning townsfolk from hearth and shop alike. By the time Elizabeth arrived, bundled in every layer she owned, nearly 40 people had gathered. Shopkeepers, ranchers, miners, all united in concern for a lost child. "Miss Harrington," Mrs. Wilson bustled over, her round face drawn with worry. "The children arrived safely. What on earth are you doing here? You should be inside." "I'm joining the search," Elizabeth said, tugging her scarf tighter. "That's no place for a lady," the older woman protested. "The men will handle it. Clara ran because of what happened in my classroom. I won't sit idle." Mrs. Wilson studied her face, then gave a reluctant nod. "Then I'm coming too. I've lived here 30 years, know these woods better than most men." Before Elizabeth could answer, Wyatt's voice rang out over the murmuring crowd. Standing on the church steps, black coat dusted white, he seemed carved from the storm itself. Grim, solid, elemental. "We have a child missing in the worst storm of the season," he said. "Clara Sutton, age 7, last seen heading east from the schoolhouse, likely toward Widow's Peak." He gestured toward the dark trees. "We'll form parties of 5, lanterns and ropes only, no firearms. Sound doesn't carry in a blizzard, and I won't have anyone shooting at shadows." He assigned search parties swiftly, organizing by terrain and experience. Elizabeth was grouped with Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Peterson, the blacksmith, and Wyatt himself. "Stay within arm's reach of each other," he instructed. "If you find Clara, signal with 3 short whistle blasts. If you're lost, stay put and blow continuously." Moving through the crowd, he checked supplies and handed out whistles. When he reached Elizabeth, he paused. "Last chance to reconsider," he said softly. "Not a chance," she replied, meeting his eyes. Something flickered there. Respect, perhaps. Stay behind me. Step where I step. The search parties moved out, lanterns flickering like fireflies against the storm. Elizabeth's group trudged east, into the forest Clara had once claimed was home to wolfmen. Wind screamed through the pines, blowing snow sideways into their faces. Within minutes, the town vanished behind them. Elizabeth struggled to match Wyatt's long strides, slipping on hidden ice beneath fresh snow. "Slow down," Mrs. Wilson called. "Not all of us have legs like tree trunks, Sheriff." Wyatt adjusted his pace without protest, his awareness of the group unshaken by urgency. Every few minutes, he stopped to lift his face to the wind, scenting the air like a hound. "Clara," they called through cupped hands. "Clara Sutton." An hour passed. The cold crept through Elizabeth's layers, numbing fingers and face. Yet Wyatt pressed forward with growing certainty, changing direction with subtle shifts, nostrils flaring, head tilted slightly, as if following a trail no one else could see. She pushed to his side. "Sheriff, how are you navigating? I can barely see 10 feet ahead." His eyes glinted in the lantern light. "Experience. The forest speaks to those who listen." "And what is it saying now?" He hesitated. "That we're not alone." A chill slithered down her spine. "Wolves?" He nodded, scanning the trees. "They're curious, watching." As if summoned, a long howl rose through the storm. Another answered, then another. "They're circling us," Mr. Peterson whispered. "Stay calm," Wyatt ordered. "They're not hunting, not us anyway." "How can you be sure?" Elizabeth asked, her voice tight. He met her gaze, steady and wild. "Trust me." Before she could press further, Mrs. Wilson pointed ahead. "There, by that fallen pine." Through the swirling snow, Elizabeth spotted it, a red scarf caught on a branch. "Clara's," Wyatt confirmed. He retrieved it, inhaled deeply, and turned sharply north. "This way. She's close." They moved faster, driven by hope and fear alike. The howls grew louder, trees closed in, ancient and thick, forcing them into single file. Elizabeth's legs burned, but she did not slow. Wyatt halted, hand raised. "Listen." At first only the wind, then sobbing. "Clara!" Elizabeth cried. "Clara, it's Miss Harrington!" The crying paused, then a small, wavering voice. Miss Harrington? I'm here." They rushed toward it, finding a shallow ravine beneath overhanging rock. There, huddled in the snow, was Clara Sutton, ashen-faced, lips blue, but alive. Elizabeth scrambled down, pulling the child into her arms. "Clara, what were you thinking?" "I saw them," the girl stammered. "The wolves. They showed me where to hide." Elizabeth glanced at Wyatt as he joined them, his face unreadable. "Let's get you warm," he said, removing his coat and wrapping it around her. "Your father's worried sick." "The wolves," Clara said urgently. "They were bigger than normal wolves, and their eyes—" "Hush now," Mrs. Wilson said gently, producing a flask. "Sip this. Medicinal brandy, doctor's orders." Clara took a swallow and winced. Wyatt blew 3 sharp blasts on his whistle, 3 clear notes that echoed even through the storm. "Can you walk, Clara?" he asked. She shook her head, tears spilling. My ankle, I fell." Wyatt lifted her with ease, cradling her close. "I've got you. You're safe now." They began the trek back. Elizabeth watched as Wyatt softened, murmuring gently to the child, adjusting his steps to keep from jostling her injured ankle. "The wolves were watching over her," Mrs. Wilson murmured beside Elizabeth. "Not hunting, guarding." "That's..." Elizabeth hesitated. Impossible was the word she wanted, but it felt inadequate. The older woman smiled faintly. "These mountains hold mysteries, Miss Harrington. Some things defy Boston logic." Ahead, Clara's voice rose over the wind. "They listened to you before, didn't they, Sheriff? The wolves? That's why they didn't hurt me." Wyatt replied in a voice too low for Elizabeth to catch, but whatever he said made Clara smile through her pain. Then Elizabeth noticed. The howling had stopped. Not faded, stopped. The moment they found her. Yet she felt their presence still, watching from the trees. "Sheriff has secret," William's message had said. She shivered. Chapter 4. The town hall glowed with lamplight, laughter and music spilling from its open doors into the cold night. Wolf Creek rarely had cause for celebration, especially in the depths of winter, but Clara's safe return had prompted a spontaneous gathering. Someone had produced a fiddle, another a harmonica, and impromptu dancing had broken out in the center of the room. Elizabeth stood near the back wall, watching John Sutton swing a laughing Clara in a careful circle. "Quite a turnaround," Mrs. Wilson commented, appearing at Elizabeth's side with 2 cups of steaming cider. "Haven't seen John smile like that since before Martha passed." Elizabeth accepted the drink gratefully. Nothing like nearly losing something to make you appreciate having it. "Wise words." Mrs. Wilson studied her shrewdly. "You look exhausted, dear. No one would fault you for retiring early." In truth, Elizabeth's muscles ached with bone-deep weariness. The search, the cold, the emotional strain, all had taken their toll. Yet she hesitated, her eyes scanning the crowded room for a tall figure that had been conspicuously absent most of the evening. "Perhaps you're right," she conceded. "Please make my excuses if anyone should ask." Mrs. Wilson patted her arm. "I'll tell them our hero school teacher needed her rest. You did well today, Elizabeth. This town won't forget it." The words warmed her more than the cider had. 6 weeks of being Miss Fancy Boston, and today was the first time she'd felt truly accepted. Outside, the night air stung her cheeks after the hall's warmth. Elizabeth pulled her cloak tighter, pausing to admire the transformed landscape. Fresh snow blanketed the town, glittering under the moonlight like scattered diamonds. She had only gone half a block when the sensation of being watched prickled along her spine. Wyatt stood a few paces behind her, his tall figure outlined against the night sky. "Sheriff," she acknowledged, her breath forming clouds between them. "Miss Harrington?" He approached slowly. "You left the celebration early." "As did you, apparently." His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his stance. "I thought I'd escort you safely home." "I'm perfectly capable of walking 2 blocks alone." "I'm aware of your capabilities," he grumbled. Elizabeth resumed walking, not particularly surprised when he fell into step beside her. "You're angry with me?" she observed as they turned onto the street leading to Mrs. Wilson's boarding house. "Not angry." His voice was carefully controlled. "Concerned." "There's no need. As you can see, I survived the day unscathed," she said. "By sheer luck," he replied, an edge entering his tone. "What you did today was brave but foolish." Elizabeth stopped abruptly. "A child was lost in a blizzard. Would you have had me sit by the fire while others searched?" "I would have had you safe." The intensity in his voice startled her. "The forest in winter is no place for—" "If you say a Boston lady, I swear I'll scream," Elizabeth interrupted. "This isn't about where you're from." Wyatt moved closer, suddenly imposing in the moonlight. "Do you have any idea what it did to me watching you push through that blizzard?" Elizabeth's spine stiffened. "What it did to you? I wasn't aware my actions required your approval, Sheriff." "They don't," he growled, closing the distance she'd created. "And I don't like it. I don't like having to stand by and watch you endanger yourself." The presumption stole her breath. "How dare you? You've known me barely 6 weeks, and suddenly you think you have the right to dictate my actions?" 6 weeks is enough. His amber eyes had darkened to burnished gold. 6 weeks of being haunted by your presence. 6 weeks of a torment I cannot name, nor seem to master. Her breath caught in her throat. Up until this moment, she thought he was merely speaking out of a desire to maintain his authority on a town member. But the way he was looking at her now, "You speak as though I've bewitched you," she said. struggling to keep her voice steady. "Because you have," he said simply, the raw honesty in his voice stealing her breath. One large hand rose to brace against the gate beside her head, his sleeve brushing her cheek. "Your presence in this town, greeting me each morning, looking at me with those eyes. It's torment enough, even knowing you're not here for me." "What do you mean?" she murmured, the words slipping out before she could stop them. A bitter smile touched his lips. "You think I wouldn't recognize William Harrington's sister?" She gasped as slowly, tantalizingly slowly, he leaned closer, his face dipping toward her neck. She felt him inhale deeply, as if drawing in her scent. "The same blood runs in your veins," he murmured. "Your scent betrays it." Elizabeth froze, shock coursing through her. "How could you possibly—" She pulled back to stare at him. "Are you saying we smell the same? That's absurd." He drew another deep breath, his nostrils flaring slightly. "Family shares more than just features," he murmured. "You carry his scent, though yours is sweeter, more intoxicating." The heat of him so close in the cold night made her knees weaken despite her confusion and outrage. "You're being inappropriate, Sheriff," she managed, though her voice emerged as little more than a whisper. "You're right," he admitted, his voice a low rumble. "God help me, Elizabeth. I've tried to maintain distance. But today, seeing you in danger—" "My safety is not your concern," her temper flared. "You are the most controlling, arrogant, infuriating man I've ever encountered." "And you," he growled, "are the most stubborn, reckless woman." His eyes darkened, something wild flickering behind them. And then, his mouth captured hers with startling hunger. Elizabeth froze in shock, her first kiss stolen in the moonlight by the very man she should be wary of. For one panicked heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Then something primal awakened inside her, responding to his touch with an intensity that shattered her composure. Her hands clutched his shirt, pulling him closer instead of pushing away. The impropriety, the danger, none of it mattered against the overwhelming sensation of his lips on hers. Wyatt wrenched himself away, breathing hard. "I shouldn't have," Hiss whispered. "Forgive me. It won't happen again." Elizabeth touched her lips. 24 years of proper Boston upbringing hadn't prepared her for this. "Good night, Miss Harrington," Wyatt said, retreating. Elizabeth watched him stride away, disappearing into the shadows before she could formulate a response. As she turned toward Mrs. Wilson's door, a wolf howled in the distance. The sound echoed through the night, lonely and haunting. Chapter 5. A month after Clara's rescue, Wolf Creek had transformed from a town that merely tolerated Elizabeth's presence to one that embraced her. The change was evident in 100 small ways: merchants saving choice items for our teacher, parents inviting her to Sunday dinners, even Billy Thompson bringing her a roughly carved wooden apple for her desk. "It's not much to look at," Mrs. Wilson observed as Elizabeth arranged wildflowers in a vase for the boarding house parlor. "But this town changes with the seasons, cold and suspicious in winter, warm and welcoming come spring." Elizabeth smiled, adjusting a sprig of mountain bluebell. "I never expected to feel so at home here." "Saving a child goes a long way," the older woman replied. "You've proven yourself one of us." "One of us?" The words warmed Elizabeth, even as they complicated her purpose in Wolf Creek. She had come for William to uncover whatever secret had led to his imprisonment. Yet with each passing day, her mission faded against the backdrop of genuine connection to the town and its people. All except one. Since that night outside Mrs. Wilson's gate, since the kiss that still haunted her dreams, Sheriff Wyatt Hayes had maintained a careful, deliberate distance. When their paths crossed on Wolf Creek's single main street, He would tip his hat politely, his amber eyes revealing nothing of the fire that had burned there beneath the moonlight. In public gatherings, he positioned himself at opposite ends of the room. If she entered the general store while he was there, he would conclude his business with suspicious haste. He was avoiding her, deliberately, completely. It should have been a relief. After all, he knew her secret, had somehow recognized her connection to William through means she still couldn't comprehend. But a month had passed with no public revelation of her true purpose in Wolf Creek. Their encounter seemed to have established an unspoken pact. He would maintain her secret if she stopped pursuing his. The arrangement made logical sense. So why did his avoidance leave an ache in her chest that reason couldn't explain? The schoolhouse emptied quickly that afternoon, children eager to enjoy the mild spring weather after a brutal winter. Elizabeth lingered at her desk, recording grades in her ledger, enjoying the quiet after a day of energetic lessons. "Miss Harrington?" She looked up to find Clara Sutton hovering in the doorway, her small face pinched with concern. "Clara? I thought you'd gone home with the others." The girl twisted her apron between her fingers. "Are you sad, Miss Harrington?" The question caught Elizabeth off guard. "What makes you think I'm sad?" "You look the way Pa did after Ma died. Like you're trying to hide something hurting inside." Clara stepped closer. "Is it because the sheriff doesn't come see you anymore?" Heat rushed to Elizabeth's cheeks. Were her feelings so transparent that even a child could read them? "The sheriff and I are merely acquaintances, Clara." "But he likes you," the girl insisted. "I can tell, and you like him too." "Clara, you are allowed to like him," Clara continued earnestly, "even if he's different." Elizabeth's heart skipped. "Different how, Clara?" The child glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers, then lowered her voice. "You know, what I told you before, about the wolves." Before Elizabeth could press further, a shadow darkened the doorway. A man stood there, lean, expensively dressed with sharp features and calculating eyes. Something about him raised her guard instantly. "Pardon the interruption," he said, his cultured voice at odds with Wolf Creek's frontier directness. "I hope I'm not intruding." Clara shrank back, clearly uncomfortable with the newcomer. "May I help you?" Elizabeth asked, instinctively moving to place herself between Clara and the stranger. "Jackson Reed." He stepped into the classroom, extending a gloved hand. "Silver Peak Mining Company. I've been meaning to make your acquaintance, Miss Harrington." Elizabeth shook his hand briefly. "A pleasure, Mr. Reed, though I'm afraid I don't understand your interest in me." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say we have a mutual connection." "Clara," Elizabeth said, not taking her eyes off Reed, "your father will be wondering where you are. Run along now." Once Clara had departed, Elizabeth faced Reed squarely. "What connection are you referring to, Mr. Reed?" "William Harrington." Reed watched her reaction carefully. "Your brother, I believe?" Elizabeth's blood ran cold. "How did you—" "Please." He waved a dismissive hand. "This is a small town, Miss Harrington. Secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when one asks the right questions. What do you want?" All pretense of cordiality vanished from her voice. "The same thing you do." Reed moved to examine the classroom's meager bookshelf. "Justice for your brother, and the truth about Sheriff Hayes." "I don't know what you're talking about." Reed smirked. "William was working for me when he was arrested. Did he tell you that in his letters?" Elizabeth's grip tightened on the edge of her desk. "My brother was imprisoned for theft," she countered. "That's the official story." Reed's voice dropped. "But we both know there's more to it than that. Just as we know there's more to our esteemed sheriff than meets the eye." "If you have something to say, Mr. Reed, say it plainly," Elizabeth snapped. "I'd rather show you." He withdrew a small envelope from his jacket, sliding it across her desk. "Follow these instructions precisely if you want to understand why your brother is still in prison and what Hayes is hiding." Elizabeth made no move to touch the envelope. Why should I trust you? Because unlike the sheriff, I have no reason to lie to you. Reed adjusted his gloves, preparing to leave. William didn't believe me either at first. His skepticism cost him his freedom. The question is, Miss Harrington, are you willing to risk the same by turning a blind eye to the truth? After he departed, Elizabeth sat motionless, staring at the envelope as if it might burst into flames. Eventually, her curiosity overcame her caution. She broke the seal and unfolded a single sheet of paper containing detailed instructions, a location in the forest, a time just after midnight, directions to cover her scent with pine oil. It was absurd, melodramatic. Yet Reed's confidence, the specificity of his instructions, and his mention of William working for him all suggested he knew something significant. Cover your scent. The strange instruction echoed Wyatt's behavior that night, inhaling at her neck, speaking of her scent. What could it mean? Chapter 6. You're not yourself tonight, Mrs. Wilson observed as Elizabeth picked at her dinner. Is it school troubles? Just tired. Elizabeth managed a wan smile. Spring fever has the children more rambunctious than usual. In truth, Reed's visit had left her shaken. His warning echoed relentlessly. Sheriff has secret. Need your help. Come soon. Danger. The rest of the evening passed in distraction. After dinner, Elizabeth retreated to her room under the pretense of preparing lessons, but instead found herself rereading William's letter for what felt like the 100th time. Wyatt's amber eyes, his knowledge of her connection to William. What had her brother discovered about the sheriff that was worth imprisoning him? And could Reed, with his slippery charm and ulterior motives, truly hold the answer? Following him into the forest was dangerous, foolish, yet doing nothing, never knowing, felt unbearable. She thought of Wyatt, of the kiss, the way he had looked at her before pulling away. What was he hiding? The next day passed in a haze. Elizabeth moved through her lessons on instinct, her mind elsewhere. That evening, as twilight settled over Wolf Creek, she sat by her window, watching the full moon rise. Its silver glow turned the town strange and dreamlike, the forest beyond the edge of town darker than ever. In less than 5 hours, if she obeyed Reed's instructions, she'd step into that darkness alone. A soft knock pulled her back. Mrs. Wilson stood in the hall, offering a steaming cup. Whatever's troubling you, dear, remember that problems faced alone are always heavier than those shared. It's nothing serious, Elizabeth lied. Just thinking about some decisions. About the sheriff, perhaps? When Elizabeth's eyes widened, Mrs. Wilson chuckled. I told you, this town doesn't hide secrets well. Half the women here have set their caps for Wyatt Hayes at one time or another. None ever caught his eye the way you have. I hardly think that man watches you when he thinks no one's looking, Mrs. Wilson continued, with a hunger that would be scandalous if folks didn't respect him so much. She patted Elizabeth's hand. Whatever's keeping you apart, I suspect it's more complicated than either of you lets on. After she left, Elizabeth sipped her tea, her thoughts racing. If she followed Reed's plan and uncovered the truth, would it change how she saw Wyatt? By 11, the house was quiet. Elizabeth dressed in her darkest clothes, laced up sturdy boots, and wrapped herself in her shawl. From beneath her bed, she retrieved the vial Reed had sent via street urchin that afternoon. The instructions were specific. Apply the oil to wrists, throat, and behind ears. Bring no light. Follow the hunter's path from Widow's Rock until it forks, then take the left trail to the clearing. Arrive by midnight, conceal yourself among the northern boulders, and wait. It was madness. Yet Elizabeth found herself opening her window, grateful that her room faced the rear of the boarding house, adjacent to the small garden. She climbed carefully onto the sloping roof of the back porch, then dropped the short distance to the ground. The full moon provided ample light as she made her way to the edge of town, keeping to shadows, heart pounding with equal parts fear and anticipation. The forest loomed before her, darker and more forbidding than it had seemed during the daytime. Elizabeth hesitated at its edge. What am I doing? Following cryptic instructions from a man she didn't trust? She was about to turn back when a figure emerged from the trees ahead, tall, unmistakable even in shadow. Wyatt. Elizabeth froze, pressing herself against a large pine trunk. From her hidden vantage point, she watched as he checked his horse's saddle, his movements deliberate and focused. He seemed to be preparing for a journey, though at this hour that made little sense. Unless... Reed's instructions flashed through her mind. The timing, the location. It couldn't be coincidence. Had he somehow known Wyatt would be here tonight? Before she could reconsider, Wyatt mounted his horse and set off along a narrow trail into the forest, the very path Reed had directed her to follow. Elizabeth waited until he had disappeared among the trees, then, heart racing, began to follow at a careful distance. The forest was alive with night sounds, the rustle of small creatures in underbrush, the whisper of wind through pine needles. Elizabeth maintained her distance from Wyatt, grateful for the bright moonlight that illuminated the path. After nearly 30 minutes of walking, the trail forked. Wyatt took the left path without hesitation, confirming Reed's knowledge of his movements. Elizabeth followed, increasingly uneasy about the implications. The path eventually opened into a large clearing ringed by towering pines. Boulders dotted the northern edge, just as Reed had described. Elizabeth carefully positioned herself behind the largest, peering out at the moonlit meadow. Wyatt had dismounted in the center of the clearing. His horse, apparently accustomed to whatever ritual was about to unfold, stood calmly nearby. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Wyatt simply stood, face lifted to the full moon, seemingly lost in thought or prayer. Elizabeth was beginning to think she had been led on a fool's errand when Wyatt began to undress. Her cheeks flamed as she watched him remove his shirt, revealing a broad chest and powerful shoulders hewn by years of physical labor. Propriety demanded she look away, yet she found herself transfixed as he continued, methodically folding each garment and placing it on a log. When he stood completely unclothed in the moonlight, Elizabeth finally averted her eyes, mortification warring with a distinctly improper fascination for his magnificent form. Whatever she had expected to witness tonight, it certainly hadn't been this. A strange sound drew her attention back to the clearing, a low groan that seemed torn from Wyatt's throat. When she looked, he had fallen to his knees, his body rigid, face contorted in what appeared to be pain. Fear gripped her. Was he ill? Injured? Should she reveal herself, offer assistance? Before she could decide, Wyatt's body began to change. His hands, fingers lengthened, nails curved into claws. Muscles swelled, his back arched, fur burst across his skin in ripples. The transformation was swift, violent, unnatural. Elizabeth pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Where Wyatt had knelt, a massive wolf now stood, silver gray in the moonlight, with eyes that glowed a familiar amber gold. Elizabeth's world tilted. Wyatt Hayes, respected sheriff of Wolf Creek, was a wolf, a creature of legend made flesh. Chapter 7. The wolf stepped forward, lowering its great head to sniff the spot where Elizabeth had stood moments earlier. Those amber eyes, Wyatt's eyes, shone with a knowing no beast should possess. Pressed against the cold stone of the boulder, Elizabeth dared not breathe. A twig cracked beneath her boot. The wolf's head jerked up, ears alert. Panic eclipsed reason. She bolted, tearing through the underbrush, branches lashing her face, skirts snagging on thorns. Behind her, a growl rose, low and startled. Roots and stones threatened to trip her in the patchy moonlight. She heard him, Soft footfalls, powerful and deliberate. He's following. He saw me. Dear God, what have I done? The truth was impossible. Wyatt Hayes, a wolf, the man who ruled Wolf Creek, the man who had kissed her. Veering off the path, Elizabeth plunged into thicker woods, lungs burning, limbs trembling. She had no sense of direction, only the need to run, away from what she'd seen, what she now knew. A fallen log blocked her path. She scrambled over it, her skirt ripping. She landed hard, twisting her ankle with a sharp jolt. Stifling a cry, she limped onward. The forest fell unnaturally silent. No nightbirds, no rustle of small things, only her breath and the brittle crack of twigs beneath her feet. The chase had gone quiet. Worse. He was circling, hunting. She stumbled into a small clearing bathed in silver moonlight, shadows thick beneath the pines. For one breathless moment, she dared hope he was gone. Then came the growl. Not from behind. 3 coyotes emerged from the brush ahead, eyes gleaming, ribs sharp beneath thin fur. Real animals this time, hungry, opportunistic, and she was alone. Elizabeth backed away slowly, snatching up a fallen branch. "Stay back," she said, her voice trembling. The coyotes fanned out, fangs bared. Another slunk in from the right, then a 5th, surrounded. The largest crouched to spring. She raised the branch, heart pounding. They would tear her apart. It leapt. A silver blur struck midair with a sound like breaking bones. A snarl shook the clearing. The wolf, Wyatt, stood between her and the coyotes, blood already darkening his coat. The pack hesitated, then surged. He met them with fury. Jaws crushed the nearest throat, claws tore flesh, but they had numbers. While he fought too, another circled behind. Elizabeth swung wildly, striking the flanker's snout. It yelped and skittered back, buying Wyatt a precious second to kill again. Blood streaked his silver fur, he fought on. At last the coyotes broke, fleeing into the trees. Wyatt chased them to the clearing's edge, snarling, then turned back, bloodied, breathing hard. Elizabeth stood frozen, branch clenched tight. This beast, this man, had saved her life. He limped toward her, staggered. "You're hurt," she whispered, absurdly, instinctively. The wolf's ears twitched. He understood. Lowering the branch, she whispered, "Let me help you." He watched her, wary but still. Then slowly he lay down. "I'll fetch your clothes and your horse. Wait here." The wolf dipped his head, or so she thought. She turned and retraced her steps, ankle throbbing, heart pounding. She found the horse where he'd left it, standing calmly by the boulder. It watched her without alarm as she retrieved Wyatt's clothes from the saddlebags. Leading it back was slow work. The horse balked at first, but followed her firm voice and steady hand. The wolf was gone. In his place, Wyatt, naked, unconscious, wounded. She dropped beside him, draped his coat over him. The gash on his shoulder was deep. The wound on his thigh bled freely. "Wyatt," she said, pressing her hand to his cheek. His skin burned. "Fever." She tore strips from her petticoat, bound his wounds, and looked to the horse. Could she lift him? She had to. Bracing herself, she heaved his body over the saddle, straining with effort and the strange intimacy of the task. She dressed him minimally, shirt, trousers, and secured him with his belt. The journey back to town was slow, painful. She paused often to check his bandages, whispering reassurances to the horse, praying no one would see them. At last, Wolf Creek appeared. She slipped through back alleys and shadows, guiding the horse behind the jailhouse to his cabin. No lights, no witnesses. Getting him down nearly broke her, but she managed, dragging and half-carrying him inside. The room was tidy. Bed, stove, books, nothing more. She got him into bed, fetched linens and whiskey, cleaned the wounds. Her hands moved surely, instinct guiding where training could not. When all was done, she placed a cool cloth on his brow and sat beside him, exhaustion creeping in. The eastern sky lightened. He had saved her, fought for her, risked his secret. And now she knew. What was he? What would he say when he woke? Her head fell forward, hand still resting near his. Sleep came, uneasy and full of questions. Chapter 8. Elizabeth woke with a jolt, her neck stiff from sleeping upright. Wyatt was still in the bed, his breathing steadier now. She leaned forward, placing a tentative hand on his forehead. The fever had broken. Relief flooded her. She began to withdraw her hand, only to freeze when his eyes suddenly opened. Elizabeth couldn't look away, caught by the naked vulnerability in his gaze. "You're awake," she managed at last. "How do you feel?" A flicker of surprise crossed his features. "I've been better," he replied, his deep voice rough with sleep. She rose quickly, needing a moment to steady herself, and poured water from the pitcher she'd filled during the night. "You lost blood," she said gently. "The wounds were deep." Wyatt drank deeply. When he lowered the cup, his expression had grown solemn. "You should have run," he said. "You saved my life," Elizabeth met his gaze. "Those coyotes would have torn me apart if not for you." "After you fled from me in terror," Wyatt observed. Heat rose to her cheeks at the memory of her panicked flight, but to her surprise, a resigned smile touched his lips. "No one is prepared for what I am," he murmured, "not even me when it first happened." Elizabeth frowned. "I was 11, Wyatt explained. Living with a trapper who'd taken me in for the extra hands. I never knew my parents." His jaw tightened. "Suddenly my bones were breaking, reshaping. I thought I was dying." The raw pain in his voice made Elizabeth's throat tighten. "You were just a child," she murmured. "A child who woke the next morning covered in blood," he confessed. "You had killed someone?" "The trapper." Wyatt's tone was flat, though something haunted lingered in his eyes. He'd come to investigate the screaming. "My bite. It's fatal to humans. I didn't know. I couldn't control it." The confession hung in the air. It wasn't your fault," Elizabeth said. "You were a child. You didn't understand what was happening." "Understanding doesn't bring back the dead," he grimaced. "After that, I learned to isolate whenever I felt the urge to change." "So does no one know what you are? Would you have me announce it at the town hall meeting?" Bitterness edged his voice. "Stand before the people who trust me to protect them and confess that their sheriff becomes a monster who can kill with a single bite?" Elizabeth had no answer. "People fear what they don't understand," Wyatt said. "I've spent my life walking among people who would hunt me down like a rabid animal if they knew what I was, and they would be justified." Elizabeth's heart squeezed. "But you can control the change now, can't you? Surely, if people knew, there are people who hunt creatures like me, Elizabeth," Wyatt interrupted. 5 years ago, a man named Lewis Holden came to Wolf Creek, a hunter." Elizabeth frowned. "How could he know about your kind?" "His family passed down the knowledge, I suppose." Wyatt's jaw set. "Holden suspected me from the start, asked too many questions, watched too closely." "Did you kill him?" she asked quietly. Pain flickered across his features. "I tried to avoid him, but he was relentless, followed me into the forest one night." His hand fisted in the blanket. "I caught his scent, knew he was tracking me, but I couldn't stop the change once it began. When he saw me transform, he attacked with a silver knife." Wyatt touched his side, where a thin scar ran along his ribs. "He managed this before I could defend myself. I tried not to bite him, but in the struggle..." He closed his eyes, just a scratch of my teeth across his arm. It was enough. The bite killed him, Elizabeth whispered. Wyatt nodded, bleak. I carried his body back to town, claimed a wild animal had attacked us both. He gave a humorless laugh. Technically, I wasn't lying. And that was the end of it? Not even close. Holden wasn't hunting alone. His expression darkened. He had a partner, Jackson Reed, who returned to town days later, found his friend dead, with me spinning tales about wolf attacks. Elizabeth tensed. Jackson Reed, she said slowly. That's why he approached me at the school. Why he seemed to know so much about you. Wyatt's eyes narrowed. Reed came to you? When? The day before I followed you into the forest. Reed's been watching me, Wyatt said grimly. After Holden died, he made it his mission to finish what his partner started. That's why he sent William to investigate you, Elizabeth breathed. He's continuing Holden's hunt. And using anyone he can to help him. Wyatt's voice hardened. What exactly happened with William? She asked, needing to understand. Wyatt sighed. Reed hired him to investigate rumors of a wolf man in these parts, filled his head with stories of monsters hiding among ordinary folk. William was young, impressionable, and needed the money, I imagine. He followed me, eventually saw what I became. But unlike Holden, he didn't confront me directly. He broke into the assayer's office, stole silver to make bullets. Wyatt met her gaze. I caught him in the act. The charge was legitimate, breaking and entering theft, but I kept him imprisoned longer than the crime warranted. Had him transferred to the territorial prison to keep him from spreading what he knew. The silence stretched between them. So you do admit it was unjust, Elizabeth said. I was afraid, Wyatt admitted. Afraid of what would happen if the town learned what walks among them. These people... His tone softened. They've been my family, my refuge. The only place I've belonged in decades. But you've seen how superstitious they can be. If there was evidence, he shook his head. They would turn on me in an instant. Even good people become dangerous when they're afraid. Elizabeth felt the weight of his isolation, of a life spent in hiding, never truly known. No one has ever accepted what you are? She asked sadly. No one has ever known and not tried to kill me, he replied. Her heart ached for him. I have seen what you are, she said. Do you fear me too? The question lingered between them, heavy with meaning. I should, he admitted, but instead I find myself hoping for things I've never dared hope for. He was silent a long moment, as if weighing every word. Since you arrived in Wolf Creek, I've felt something I've never experienced before. From the moment you stepped off that train, something inside me responded to you. Not just the man, but the wolf too. What do you mean? Elizabeth asked, hardly breathing. Your scent, he said. It calls to me in ways I can't explain. I know where you are without looking. At night, when I try to sleep, I hear your heartbeat as if you were lying beside me. Her pulse quickened. But then why have you been avoiding me? She asked, flushing. I had to. His fingers tightened on the blanket. Being near you makes the wolf restless, hungry. That night at Mrs. Wilson's gate, I had no right to touch you, but I couldn't stop myself. His amber eyes locked on hers. You haunt me, Elizabeth, in both my forms. When I'm the wolf, I find myself drawn to wherever you are, circling the boarding house at night, just to be near you. You've been watching me? She whispered. I've never felt this way before, this pull, this need. It terrifies me. Why? Because I've spent my life alone for a reason. Vulnerability flickered across his face. I'm dangerous. What I feel for you, it's too consuming. The wolf wants to claim you. And he broke off. And you? She prompted gently. I want you in ways I've never wanted another living soul. Not merely as a man desires a woman, though the Lord above knows such thoughts have haunted my dreams. I yearn for your presence each morning, to hear your voice in these walls, to catch the faint trace of your perfume. His voice faltered. I wish to share with you burdens I have borne in solitude since childhood. His yearning stole her breath. No man had ever spoken to her so honestly, so unguarded. But then bitterness crept in his tone. You have to understand, Elizabeth. I'm not fully human. My bite kills. What kind of life could I offer you? That should be my choice, she said softly. You can't possibly... I can't explain what I feel either, she interrupted. The way my heart races when you're near. I came here for William, but I stayed for... She hesitated, then added, I stayed for you. Hope flickered in his eyes, quickly hidden. You don't know what you're saying. What I am is someone who has lived in fear, yet chosen to protect rather than harm, who saved my life at risk of his own. She squeezed his hand. I may not understand everything about what you are, Wyatt Hayes, but I understand enough to know you are worth loving. His eyes darkened, falling to her lips. Elizabeth, he said, her name a warning, a plea. She understood. Leaning forward, she kissed him. Not with hunger, but with understanding, with acceptance. The beginning of something neither had dared to hope for. Chapter 9. Elizabeth found Ms. Wilson outside the boarding house an hour later. Good heavens, child. I was beginning to wonder if you'd been carried off by wolves. Her gaze held concern, not judgment. I need to cancel classes, Elizabeth said. Sheriff Hayes was injured. Hunting accident. Hunting accident, Mrs. Wilson echoed, clearly skeptical. Well, the children won't mind a holiday. Anything you need? Food, bandages, Elizabeth hesitated, and discretion. Mrs. Wilson nodded. I'll send Billy Thompson's mother over with a stew. You take care of our sheriff. As Elizabeth turned, movement across the street caught her eye, a lean figure slipping between buildings. She quickened her pace toward the general store, but a hand clamped over her mouth and dragged her into an alley. Not a sound, Reed hissed, the cold barrel of a gun pressing against her ribs, or I'll put a bullet through you right here. Fear stole her breath. What do you want? She managed once he loosened his grip. Justice, he said, voice tight with obsession. Your wolf killed my partner. The town deserves to know the truth. He forced her toward the street just as Church let out. Conversations died at the sight of Reed holding Elizabeth at gunpoint. Good morning, good citizens of Wolf Creek, he called. I believe it's time for a reckoning. Mr. Peterson stepped forward. What's the meaning of this, Reed? Let Miss Harrington go. Not until you all see the truth. Reed tightened his grip. Fetch the sheriff. Tell him to come unarmed or the schoolteacher dies. Elizabeth spotted Billy Thompson break from the crowd, sprinting toward Wyatt's cabin. Around them, townsfolk watched in stunned silence. This man is deranged, Elizabeth shouted. Don't listen to... The barrel pressed harder. Your beloved sheriff has been lying to you all, Reed declared. He's not human. He's a monster. Murmurs rose, disbelief, confusion, a few uneasy chuckles. Then the crowd parted. Wyatt appeared, pale but alert, his injured shoulder visible beneath a hastily buttoned shirt. His gun belt was gone. Let her go, Reed, he said quietly. This is between you and me. Oh, it's between you and everyone now. Reed's voice sharpened. Show them. Transform, or she dies. What's he talking about, Sheriff? Someone asked. Wyatt's eyes never left Reed. You don't want to do this. I've waited 5 years. Reed's finger tensed on the trigger. Change, now. Elizabeth felt the tremor in his arm, not fear but anticipation. He wanted this. Wyatt slowly unpinned his badge and set it on the ground. He looked out at the crowd, neighbors he'd protected for years. "Step back," he said softly. Something in his voice made them obey. Reed's grip tightened. Then, before their eyes, Sheriff Wyatt Hayes began to change. It happened faster than it had in the forest, bones cracking, skin shifting, fur rippling across his body. Within moments, a massive wolf stood where a man had been. Screams erupted. Women shielded children. Men looked for weapons. "See?" Reed shouted. "The monster among you?" The wolf remained still, amber gaze locked on Elizabeth. Reed raised his voice. "This beast killed my partner. Who will help me destroy him?" Silence. No one moved. Then Mrs. Wilson stepped forward. Small but unshaken, her voice rang clear. "I don't think so, Reed. That beast has protected this town for 5 years." She turned to the crowd. "When the Miller baby was lost, who found her? When outlaws came, who ran them off?" Others joined her. "So what if he's a wolf? He saved Clara in the blizzard," said John Sutton. "Taught my Billy to respect the law," added Mrs. Thompson. Voices rose in support. Reed's grip faltered. "You're all mad," he snarled, "or bewitched." "He's one of ours," Mrs. Wilson said firmly. "Wolf Creek takes care of its own." Reed snapped. "Then you'll all die with him." He raised the gun. Elizabeth drove her elbow into his ribs, wrenching free as the weapon fired into the dirt. Wyatt lunged, a silver blur. Reed screamed as powerful jaws clamped around his arm, the gun clattering to the ground. Townsmen rushed forward, subduing him as Wyatt released his grip. The wolf panted, blood seeping from reopened wounds. Then his body began to shift again, fur receding, limbs straightening, until Wyatt knelt in human form, gasping. The blacksmith stepped forward, draping a coat over his shoulders. Still kneeling, Wyatt looked out over the silent crowd. Elizabeth moved to his side, kneeling beside him, her hand finding his. "You're bleeding again," she murmured, inspecting his shoulder. A ripple passed through the crowd. Then Mrs. Wilson stepped forward and bent to retrieve the sheriff's badge. She polished it against her apron and held it out. "I believe this is yours, Sheriff." Wyatt looked up, stunned. "Wolf Creek takes care of its own," she repeated. One by one, heads nodded. Not all, but enough. With Elizabeth's help, Wyatt rose. He pinned the badge to the coat, reclaiming his place among them. The truth was no longer hidden, and still they chose him. Epilogue. Spring blossoms adorned the schoolhouse, temporarily transformed for the occasion with wildflowers and pine boughs. Their fragrance drifted on the warm breeze that rustled Elizabeth's simple dress. 3 months had passed since Wyatt's secret had been revealed. 3 months of adjustment, acceptance, and unexpectedly, deeper bonds between the sheriff and the town he'd long protected. Elizabeth smoothed her hands over her dress, hardly believing the day had come. The familiar room looked different with the students' desks pushed against the walls to make space for the gathering. Through the open door, she spotted familiar faces. Mrs. Wilson dabbing her eyes, John Sutton and Clara dressed in their Sunday best. Even Billy Thompson sat mostly still, his feet swinging beneath his chair. "Ready, Lizzie?" William stood beside her, awkward in his borrowed suit, his pallor a reminder of his recent release from territorial prison. "I'm ready," she said, taking his arm, "though I still can't believe you agreed to give me away." William's expression softened. "He's a good man, Lizzie, wolf or not." They stepped inside. Elizabeth's gaze found Wyatt's, his eyes glowing with a joy she'd never seen before. The circuit preacher, passing through town at the perfect time, or perhaps by Mrs. Wilson's arrangement, began the simple ceremony. Wyatt took Elizabeth's hands in his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "What runs within me recognizes what lies within you. Despite our two natures, from now on we share one bond, always." A murmur passed through the gathering, not judgment, understanding. "By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. "You may kiss your bride." Wyatt's lips met hers, sealing their union, and Elizabeth felt something click into place. She had come seeking justice, and found home, purpose, and a love beyond reason. "Mrs. Hayes," Wyatt murmured. Elizabeth smiled. "Sheriff Hayes." Hand in hand, they turned to face their town, their family, who rose as one to celebrate the union of the schoolteacher and the wolf who guarded them all. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this story. It was a little different from my usual ones, since it takes place back in 1880. I'd love to know what you thought of it. Did you enjoy this historical setting? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next story. Love, Lily.